Session.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
Have a second. Roll call, Mr. Lester.
Yes, ma'am. Tim Lovelace,
Here.
Carl Ray,
Yes.
David Eaton,
Yes.
Steve Brady,
Yes.
Rebecca Dye,
Yes.
Horace Christian,
Present.
and Luann Wallace.
Yes.
I will. I'm going to. Yes, ma'am. Certification of closed session pursuant to subsection 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia, 1950 as amended. Each member of the Board of Supervisors upon roll call certifies that to the best of their knowledge, one, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters that were identified in the motions by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the Board of Supervisors. Any member of the Board of Supervisors who believes that there was a departure in the requirements shall state so prior to the vote, indicating the substance of that departure in his or her judgment has taken place. Are there any supervisors who believe a departure has taken place? Seeing none, if you agree that the matters heard, discussed, or considered during the closed meeting were pursuant only to the motions by which the closed meeting was convened, please signify by saying yea or yes. Tim Lovelace.
Yes.
Carl Ray.
Yes.
David Eaton.
Yes.
Steve Brady.
Yes.
Rebecca Dye.
Yes.
Horace Christian.
Yes.
And Luann Wallace.
Yes.
Ma'am, you have approval to return to regular session.
Thank you, Mr. Lester. At this time, we'll have our invocation, please.
Let us pray. Father God, Lord, we love you. We thank you and we praise you today, Father. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come out, Father, and we thank you for all the blessings that you bestowed upon us. We ask you to be with us the rest of this evening, Father, and take us home safely. Help us make the decisions that you would have us make, Father, for it's in your name I pray. Amen.
Thank you. Now we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we need an approval of the agenda as amended.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Got a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Now we're moving on to our public hearing at this time. First on the public hearing agenda is an ordinance to permit Russell and Tazewell County building inspection officials and Russell and Tazewell County erosion and sediment control inspection officials to mutually perform inspections upon property owned by Pure Salmon, Virginia, LLC, in Russell County and in Tazewell County. Mr. Lester, do you need to take the floor on that?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you. First is the public hearing. The first on public hearing is the ordinance to permit Russell and Tazewell County building inspection officials and Russell and Tazewell County erosion and sediment control inspection officials to mutually perform inspections upon the property owned by Pure Salmon, LLC in Russell County and Tazewell County, Virginia. We'll take all citizens' comments. Please, when you come up, introduce yourself and where you live. Since there's being none, we'll close the citizens' comment concerning the public hearing, concerning the ordinance for permit Russell and Tazewell counties. Building inspection officials in Russell County and Tazewell County erosion and sediment inspection officials to mutually perform inspections upon the property owned by Pure Salmon LLC in Russell and Tazewell County. Next on the agenda for the public hearing is the Project Johnny interjurisdictional agreement. Again, if you come up, please state your name and your 911 address. Being none, that closes the public hearing for the Project Johnny interjurisdictional agreement. Next on the public hearing, the agenda is the Paul Inskeep. Did I pronounce that? Say that?
Yeah.
Thank you. He is the project engineer for Project Jonah. Again, this, if you don't mind, come up here and,
So I got to speak to this?
yes, sir.
Fantastic, Brandon, you join me?
As you need.
Very good. So the idea of today, I was talking to Mr. Lester Friday about this board meeting. And, we had a couple of agenda items. We'd like to just give everybody an update on the project. And also I'd like to introduce Brandon Thorne, who is the CFO of Pure Salmon, Virginia. So I'm the project manager of the project, and I'll be doing most of the speaking through this as we progress through giving everybody an update. So, all right, Alonzo, what do I do wrong?
Excuse me, who was your partner? What was his name?
Brandon Thorne. You might have to hit the button for me this way. Okay, go for it. Let's try, there we go. So just for those that have seen some of the updates from Pure Salmon, this is probably one of the last slides that you saw. And what I wanted to do was to start here, talk about the progression, talk about some changes we've had to make, and then of course, looking kind of a lens looking at the future, what's critical, and how we'll progress over the next couple of years. So this was the last layout that was published, and this is some general idea of what the landscape looked like back in June of 2021. So I know a few folks that picked up on this. You can see it's one large central building. We did some renderings and tried to make it pretty and presentable. What happened soon after that is, if you wouldn't mind progressing to the next slide, is that we started to do a little bit of soil studying in the area, and even though we had done some conformational borings, we realized very quickly that the current building location was not going to work as it sits. So over the last 6 months, and I really bring this up because I had published a schedule much sooner for permitting, roughly August, September, October timeframe, and I wanted to kind of explain why there's a bit of a delay. That really came down to the fact that there was an area of the site that was completely unusable for the task at hand. So we have spent the last 6 to 8 months reconfiguring to this layout that we see in front of us, and we're progressing with design quite nicely. This will be in the permitting package here due in just a couple weeks, and the county, of course, will be looking at these same basic drawings. There'll be some slight tweaks, but it's basically the same thing. Go for it. On site today, oh, this is a good one. So I would like to share some fun facts about the project because I get a lot of these questions. How big is it? What is the capacity? What's it going to look like? So I figured I'd spend a minute just talking about the project for anybody new, and also just kind of a refresher for anybody that's familiar with it. But it does produce 10,000 tons, and that's TONNES, so it's metric tons, so you can equate that to about 11,000 imperial tons a year of Atlantic salmon, about 10 pounds in size, which is fish maybe this big. And on top of that, we've got roughly, I think the latest estimate was 735,000 square feet fully enclosed. So as you can imagine, we're growing this not in a river, not in an open tank, not in a pond, but actually an enclosed environmental space that has some fairly expensive and strict biosecurity requirements around that, just for fish well-being and whatnot. There is food processing on site, so we actually take the salmon from the egg form. We procure eggs, 25 cents for 1,000, something like that, and we actually grow them all the way through their 22-month lifespan and produce, at the end of the product line, produces a consumable product that you would see in a market, sometimes white labeled for different grocery stores and things like that. That will be frozen product as well as smoked product, and that product is intended to change over time, so you might see different product coming out of the facility as we figure out what the market's like for the U.S. for our product. Along with that, we're hiring over 218 employees. There's about 11 miles of underground piping, believe it or not, underneath of this facility. which adds a lot of the complications. So if you're from a water treatment background or you built tanks and buildings and whatnot, the complexity is not so much above grade, but actually below grade in what you don't see. The largest of the tanks, there's roughly 24 of these that are about 80 feet in diameter, and they're about 1 million gallons each. Along with that, that constitutes roughly 30 to 32 million gallons of water on site. We've actually trimmed that down a little bit just for economic reasons by recirculating water a bit more. And consequently, out of that 32 million gallons, every minute, 24/7, there's about 1.5 million gallons getting recirculated. So if you have any history with hatcheries or even the ocean, fishing farms and whatnot, you have fish that's inside a body of water and the body of water moves. Well, we don't have that luxury here naturally because we're dealing with a saltwater environment. And instead we just take the same fish, leave them inside the tank and just replace the water multiple times every hour. And that's how we're able to clean and actually maintain proper oxygen levels, remove CO2, take care of the denitrification steps and whatnot. We go back one more. There we go. And we're doing all this actually at a very, very high recycle rate. And this is, I was talking to some gentlemen outside, this is actually one of the world's first in this space. And not only that, this project is leading all the other pure salmon endeavors out there. This is not the only project for pure salmon, this is the only US one at the time. And we are front running the rest of the countries right now. So we've got Japan, who's right on our heels. We've got France, there's Brunei, and a couple others as well. So this is a global design, but we happen to be right here looking at the first one. So we do that with less than 400,000 gallons a day, which if you consider the amount of water that this facility has, that's an extremely small flow rate from an intake perspective, giving us the ability to actually not need to be next to the ocean to perform the task. Next up is just some general photos of the site today for those who have not seen it. I know that we try to do a little bit of posting on Facebook and whatnot, try to get some public awareness out there. It kind of looks like strip mining for coal a little bit. So we've had to bench basically about an 80-foot section of the hillside for soil remediation purposes. We spent most of the summer doing that. We've now got to go and do some grouting, as you can imagine if you're familiar with the karst environment in this landscape, apply some wick drains, and then we're going to start with structural fill and of course a surcharge. This means there's roughly 2.3 million cubic yards of material we will have moved by the end of this project for sure, maybe a bit more. This valley was about 75 feet deep, and we have completely filled it up. It's a nice little flat pad, but unfortunately it's not structural fill, so we can't use it for buildings or anything like that. I get this a lot. When people come to the site, they're like, oh, look at this nice facility, this nice flat pad. This, in fact, is not where the building sit. This is just the wasted material that we've had to put in a valley and fill that. So there's obviously, if you're thinking about, we're taking down a mountain, filling a valley, there's some balance in there. We can't just keep taking the mountain down because then we just create another mountain. So there's a bit of balance, and this is just kind of a nice picture of what it's looked like over the last couple months. These were taken in December, mostly, some in January. We've also crushed, if you go back one more, Jeremy, we've also spent quite a bit. Yep, okay, we'll go forward one more. Okay, that's fine. So we started placing structural fill actually in the cut regions here just a couple months ago, which is pretty exciting because eventually we stopped taking material out of the hole and we started putting material back, which is a monumental milestone in itself. So we're not having to dig any deeper, and the structural fill was just there to kind of polish off the benching plan, as you can imagine. And each of these lifts are about 10 to 12 feet tall, just to give it perspective. Now we can go to the next one. And then, of course, any rock that we pull out, we end up crushing on site to a 6-inch minus. And of course, we bring in some 10s and 57s and things of that nature as well for construction reasons. We need probably, in the neighborhood of 80 to 90,000 cubic yards of stone to sit below the buildings. So any rock that we have to harvest it on site and repurpose that because it's just not economical to bring it in. Again, just kind of a fun fact of the project, not to get too in the weeds, but the scale of the project is much more visual when you're looking at photos and whatnot. Go for one more. This is the entrance road, so pretty soon on Route 19 as you're going towards, I guess from here, you're coming towards the college, right on the right. You're going to see a nice giant hole open up, a stormwater basin get applied, and that will be our actual entrance, our main entrance. We're still looking at the name of that road. We've got some ideas floating around and things like that, but this It's probably a 12 to 1,500 foot road that will be, I believe, state-owned at the end of the project. This will be how everybody actually gets into the project when they go see it or visit or work there and whatnot. And this is inside of about a 45 to 60 foot cut, depending on where you stand, through that hillside. So for everybody that drives and commutes down there, you'll hopefully see that open up here in March. That's the idea. As we've had to work basically towards the stormwater basin, get down to the right level, and then we can kind of open it up at the very last minute. So you're going to see a lot of progress very, very quickly, and it'll be recognizable.
Sir, how long do you expect before you get the new opening?
Opening?
Yeah, you said you're going to do a main entrance, right?
That's
From 19 over.
from 19. That's roughly March when you'll physically be able to see it.
Yeah, because you guys go right down by my house now.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. We're in a public hearing, so no question. Thank you.
Okay. Just a quick update on schedule. The immediate task at hand is continuing a lot of this earthwork. As you can imagine, we have a tremendous amount of material still to move. We've moved about 1 million cubic yards to date, and I just referenced a $2.3 million number. We've got to get there sooner than later, and that's what we're going to focus on right now. The next one is permitting, which we're going to talk about here in a bit as well, and what the first agenda item was for this specific meeting. It's very critical to our engineering. So like I said, we've had some mitigation steps, you could say, in building placement and design over this last year. We've kind of accomplished that. We have not pushed, to be clear, our start date or our end date. So we're still holding those dates firm, which means two things. Construction has got to happen more things in parallel, as you can imagine. Engineering has to happen a bit more in parallel, as you can imagine. And we've also got to ask and squeeze the permitting process as much as we can as well to maintain that schedule. So that's why I wanted to put this here to make sure it's clear to everybody that things didn't move 6 to 8 months. That was an internal shift, but our deadlines are still the same. We're still looking at the county for the same amount of reviews and approvals for that permitting process. I think the next slide details that just a bit. In talking about the permitting process, I've outlined just some key takeaways. But there's more detail than this, but I wanted to express that, permitting for maybe a government building, I can imagine, would be, the whole thing's engineered, and then you go for permitting. In our life, the way we are today, based on schedule, we've got to be able to say, okay, here's the facility arrangement. While we're polishing off the next set of buildings, we're going to pass those to you. So it's not going to be one big package to review at any point in time. We've got to, stagger our foundation, our buildings. The various different buildings will all have different permitting requirements as well, and spread that out over a couple months, of course, and focus on what we can get through right away and get it permitted, and then of course start construction here in Q3, roughly July timeframe in 2022. And that gets us about to where we are now. For any questions from the board?
Anyone have any burning questions at this time?
How many, are the buildings all going to be in Tazewell County or Russell County or a split?
It's a little bit of a split. I will say the majority is in Russell.
Okay, how many buildings do you think will be in Russell?
I would say, looking at that, 8 to 9 total. Maybe 6 to 8. I have to visualize where the line is, I'm sorry.
Well, I'd like to say one thing. This is going to be a great opportunity for this region. I really am grateful. I mean, this is going to be something that will open the eyes of a lot of people in this rural area of Southwest Virginia. This industry alone is going to have a huge impact. And I am really grateful. I know it's been a process. I understand that. But I will tell you from my perspective, I'm 100% in on this, and whatever it takes. That's a lot of jobs. That's a lot of good jobs for a lot of good people in this area, and we need jobs terribly bad.
And the one thing I did not touch on, but I did speak to back in December, was the construction jobs alone. So while we might be operating the facility of, let's say 200, 250 people, whatever it be, the construction effort to meet the schedule is between 300 and 500 count, depending on how we decide to break the jobs up. So there's a huge influx of opportunity here over a fairly, you could say, short construction period, but it's still all the way out to 2025, so it's not that short. But there's 2-3 years at least of solid construction on site going, and it's going to be a lot of manpower required just for that.
Any job's an important job, and we need desperately. This is a great agriculture industry facility project, and that's one thing I think we've been in depth in this area in the region of Southwest Virginia is agriculture. You know, that's a big part of this region, and this right here is just gonna be like the icing on the cake
Yeah.
for what you guys are doing. And I'm just telling you again, I'm really grateful that this opportunity is coming to us.
One more thing, if I may, and I'll let you talk, Rebecca, excuse me. Your timeline for construction, because I know that you can't speak, but I can for you. So I need to make sure that all the facility work is taken care of and the permitting and everything is in place so that when you do get out on Route 19 with everything that's going to happen there, will notification go back to some residents? Will it come to us as a board and we relay that information through social media or whatever means? Or do you notify the residents for blasting purposes or whatever you're doing?
So for the blasting that's happening on site now, it's managed by a subcontractor completely. It's, you know, they own the permitting and everything. The future construction works where you get a lot of different subs. And this is really what we're talking about. You know, you have a huge, much more influx of just people, staff, workers, and whatnot. We've talked about doing social media blasts. We can set up a communication line. I don't think that's impractical or impossible to do. We have somebody that can manage that for us. I will say this, you know, when we get into the summer months, you know, like always said on the farm, you gotta make hay while the sun's shining, right? So at the end of the day, we absolutely will be running as many shifts, as many hours a day during the summer, because we can't afford another winter like the last two that we've had. I mean, really, that's what's killing us today. So we intend to absolutely use the daylight hours as much as we can. We have to meet the schedule.
Yes, but we'll be able to, our communities in that upper end of the county, will, those communities up there and those folks living up there, will all know kind of what's going on. So if you're doing anything major,
so
those communities can know.
I think the best thing to do is take this to an email or offline conversation, and we can talk about what's best for the community. I mean, we don't want to, you know, step on anybody's toes or anything like that. I just want to make sure the expectation is very clear that when we get started.
But the question arose, even though it came from the audience, the question arose. So we're just listening. Thank you.
Very good.
Have you hit any caves or caverns up there yet?
Yes.
What do you have to do? What's the process once you hit those?
The one that we hit actually will get removed because it was at the upper level, so we're going to take that soil right off anyway, so that was not really a big risk. Effectively, when you, I'm learning this now because I didn't know before, but when you hit a cavern, we effectively fill it concrete. And you know, it's not exactly like concrete, it's a mobility grout, but you drill down, you might go down 80 feet until you hit rock, and then you pump at a certain pressure, and as you come up, you just fill the voids in. And there's a strategy where we can do that around certain foundations or high loads like tanks and things of that nature. So it's a risk that we know in the area, and luckily we spent the money doing ERI studies because we happened to just miss the big one that would have cost us a lot of time and money by missing the voids.
So was the voids, the caves in the road base, or was it at the location of the facility?
It's at the location outside of the facility, but where we had to excavate.
But close enough to the facility?
Well, again, the one that we hit, that's going to be removed because we're going to dig the entire thing out. It's just, you know, think about it this way: we're cutting down, you know, 40 feet. We found it like the 20-foot mark.
Because I you know, you working with Timmons Group, they're doing the blasting for the 19th, and you know, I know that y'all are working with VDOT now, and then giving the traveling public notification. Then, like Ms. Wallace wanted, we also had to give our citizens, you know, they're around, adjacent to it. So for the noise and whatever and traffic and, you know, going to school and stuff, we have to stop northbound and southbound 19 when we blast. So those community notices and public PR would be very beneficial. And maybe look at the local newspapers if you know ahead of time, this is to be the blasting time. If you need our help, we have social medias too, that we can help you with this too.
I'm sure your social following is probably bigger than ours in this area, so we need to tap into what your network has. Blasting, in a lot of ways, you know, it'll rain in the morning, so we've got to shift the blasting to the afternoon or vice versa, right? So it's not something that we can give a newspaper 2 days in advance, say, hey, at 9:30 on this day, we'll absolutely be doing this work. or social media, I think is the right answer.
And my last question is, right now, and as far as the project, Jonah, from the engineering perspective, this project is on schedule. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, with that, when do you, if you can tell us, when do you think you'll start any of the buildings?
So that's the July 2022 date that we just spoke about. So the permitting has to happen between, after the engineering staff gets done drafting it, we'll send it over for permitting, and as soon as it gets permitted, we start construction.
So they will be drafting the building, making the design of it,
That's right.
and then hopefully they'll start in July.
That's the plan.
Is that the administration building, or that's the first phase?
The first one will be the administration building,
Yep.
soon followed by the hatchery.
And that's why we're proceeding with our inspectors and the jurisdiction agreement for both sides.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. And then as we progress from there, we need to start shifting the order based upon where our engineering is
As we
being completed.
when the first one starts, we can come in unison and sync with what y'all are doing.
Okay. Not a problem. Sounds like communication is the trick. Okay.
Guys, thank you. Thank you.
Very good. Love to get my flash
I'm
drive.
sorry if you had to travel so far to,
Yeah.
give it. But this is the kickoff of the first process. The rest will be in the site development. Nobody's is allowed up there, so they don't know, they have not seen what has been occurring.
Yeah, absolutely. No pressure.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
It is.
Okay, if we're ready to move on to new business? Yes, we are. Okay. I need approval of the minutes. You guys have seen those, that's in your packet. And we have an A and a B. Now, I have an attorney question possibly for the B part, so we did not have a quorum with our meeting that we went to, so how do you want that handled?
You can have a form, but so that means you couldn't take any action if you still approve that no action was taken.
Very good. All right, so do you want that separately? We do them separately. Doesn't matter to you?
There's not an objection, you can approve them together. Just a motion to approve the minutes from January 3rd and February 2nd.
Very good. I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes from January 3rd and February 2nd.
So move, Madam Chair.
Have a motion?
Second, Madam Chair.
Got a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to new business number 2, approval of expenditures presented for payment. I need a motion.
So moved.
Got a motion from Mr. Eaton,
Second.
second from Mr. Breeding. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, number 3 in your packet, committee appointments for board consideration. We have the Russell County Planning Commission. Mr. Eaton, you want to work on that one for us?
Well, yeah, Mr. McLaughlin had contacted me and said that he couldn't hold that position on the planning commission, but I do have another candidate, if you may, Madam Chair.
Do you have that candidate ready to present with an application? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Well, no, that's fine. I didn't get his application in to you on time, but I can wait. I can even hold this out and wait till the next meeting as long as they have enough people in the planning commission to have a quorum.
They have to have been schooled
Yes,
in
they gotta
planning
be,
commission.
even though they come, they still have to have their, to
So
be able
that's
to make a
So
motion.
that, well, I can hold this off until, I'll get his application in.
I don't think we have a burning problem right now on planning commission. I just don't, I want you to be able to get your guy or gal in so they can go to school.
Mr. Eaton, whoever you do select, we need to get him in school because the next one starts in March.
Oh, let's do that now.
All right.
Sorry.
I have Mr. Keith Ray. Let me give you a little history of Keith. He's retired as a federal mine inspector. He's now got a degree and he's teaching school at Honaker. So he retired from the federal mine inspector and then went right back to work, and now he's teaching school at Honaker. So he's very qualified. He's got an engineering degree. I think he'd be real suited for the planning commission. So Keith Ray.
Okay, we have a motion for Keith Ray to be taking Mr. McLaughlin's resignation place. I'll need a motion.
I'll make it.
Okay?
Need a second.
This is a committee appointment, but I guess we do need a second for this, don't we? Yes.
Second.
We got a second from Mr. Breeding. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstention?
Thank you,
Any
Madam
discussion?
Chair.
You're very welcome. Mr. Lester, I would ask that Mr. Ray be placed on the list to go to planning school.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, next we come to citizens' comments period. And at this time, I've got a list, I think, of folks in front of me that would like to talk about this. And I will tell you that I have my timer in hand. You're going to get 3 minutes, okay? All right, the first one is Tommy Austin, that I call Sonny.
If y'all look up in the left-hand corner, this email was sent to everybody on July the 12th, 2021. And I've been waiting since then for an answer.
I'm sorry, I apologize.